Hey guys, so we've had a couple people post about running out of gas in the C-Pro Bay Boat series, and just wanted to talk about what tools are available on the Simrad and Suzuki interface to make sure that doesn't happen and how you use them. So if you look at my bar here, the first thing you're going to notice is I have two different fuel levels, and they're different, and they'll always be different. So the top one is actually based on the Suzuki interface cable, and what happens there is when you fill the boat up, you let the interface know that you're full, and then every gallon that you use is subtracted away from it. So if you look right here, you'll see that the fuel trip is 4.6 and the fuel is 65.4. Well, I have a 70-gallon tank, so that what that means is Suzuki took and calculated 70 minus 4.6 and gave me the 65.4 reading. The second one right here is the fluid level sensor in the tank. And all that's doing is that's just a little float. The higher up it goes or the lower it goes changes the resistance. And so the NEMA network's just reading the amount of resistance and calculating how much fuel is left in the tank. So both of these can be off, and it's important to use the lowest of the two values and understand how they're derived. So remember that the float level sensor, anytime the boat's not perfectly level, will likely be off one way or the other. And the Suzuki interface cable will always be off if you don't actually get the tank full. Or let's say if you just put in 10 gallons and tell it you put in 10 gallons, repeat that a dozen times, over time it will get less accurate because it's always starting from what it had before. So as often as you can, you want to fill the tank all the way up. So before either of these work, we want to make sure that our settings are correct. And so we're going to go up here. Next, we want to click the settings. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll go to fuel and then vessel setup. So I've already got it entered here that I have 70 gallons in my fuel tank. And the reason that this is important is that's what that Suzuki gauge is going to use to subtract from the starting point. The next thing you'll want to do is you'll want to go to network, and we want to go to sources. Oops, I'm sorry, device list. And so we'll want to click on the fluid level, and you'll want to click on configure. So this is telling that sensor how much fuel you have. So you can see here that I put roughly 70 gallons in, and so that's going to be accurate. So now let's get back to our cruise mode. So the first thing I want to go over before I get too much in the details is if you click on the hamburger icon, you'll notice you have bar 1, and you can actually set this to cruise, fishing, anchor, fuel, etc. So let's say if whenever you're fishing you want to have different data, you can always flip between bars just by selecting cruise, fishing, or if you don't want it, you can actually turn it off. So let's do the cruise for now. Whatever you choose is up to you. So when you get back to the setup, you'll probably have different gauges than what I have. So what I have is I have my miles per hour right here, simply because Manatee Zone's in Florida. I've been pulled over for doing over 25, so I try to be careful. Then you've got your depth, just because I don't want to hit rock bottom. Next thing is I have my two different fuel sensors we talked about. Down here I have fuel trip. This is helpful if you want to split fuel with a buddy. Then we have the Eco GPS. So this just lets me know that I'm trimmed properly and running at peak fuel economy at all times. And then last is just destination or distance to destination. So if we're heading offshore, I know how far it is. If it's rough, I can make a judgment call if I want to come back or not. And if you want to customize these, I'll show you both. So any setting you want to change, just long hold, and you can see it pops up and asks me to change the data. So if we go down, you'll see that this one is the vessel fuel remaining, and so this is the Suzuki calculated one. So you go under vessel and you'll scroll all the way down to vessel fuel remaining, and you'll select that. The next one is the fuel. If we long tap that, we'll see it's under fuel tank, fuel remaining. If this was ever wrong, you can actually select data sources, and you can choose the data source on your network that you want, but it should default to the correct setting. That's it for the Simrad. As long as you take the lowest of these two values, and as long as you're religious about marking every time you get fuel, you should never have an issue running out of fuel. If you have the C10 gauge and don't want to waste real estate on your Simrad display, you can also do the same thing here, simply by going to Menu and Change Data. Oops. we go, menu. And you can see there that's change data. It's a little hard to see at night. All I would do is click on enter, or I can use the up arrows to switch between. And it's in the exact same spot here. So once again, the vessel, which is calculated based on your Suzuki, is under vessel. Or if you want to go with the tank, you scroll down to fuel tank and choose the fuel remaining. Fuel level would just be the percentage. So last things last, to make sure that this is actually accurate, we're going to go ahead and cut the ignition key. And so for most boats as they come from the factory, this would actually turn off the Suzuki gauge. So for me, because I've got this wired into my NEMA network, I need to turn off the Simrads. I'm going to go ahead and turn this back on, turn my key back on. And the first thing it's going to ask me is, did I fill up the tank? And I did throw 5 gallons of gas in there. So it's asking me now, did you fill up with any gas? I want to choose yes, hit enter. So 2 things you can do here is I can either enter the amount that was added, and this is what you want to do if you fill up on the water, because if the boat's not sitting level, you don't 100% know that you got a full tank. Or in my case, I filled it up at the pump. I kept clicking until I saw the gas almost come out from the pipe. So I'll set to full, and I'll click OK. So now we can see that both of these match because I'm leaning slightly down, so the fuel tank sensor is going to always read 100% when you're at this angle. And then this one right here, the engine, because I set it to 70 gallons is what the boat holds, and I just told it was full, it's automatically calculating 70 gallons. That's it.